KN6UMZ. Hi.
Welcome. Thanks so much for joining us.
And I'm
Thank
Lou,
you.
AC6LS. I'm a troublemaker with Oliver. Here at his request to give him some moral support.
Oh, very good. A co-conspirator, I reckon.
I'm Jacob, KN6NST. Oh, sorry.
Oh, welcome, Jacob.
Yeah, thank you.
Where are you from?
Oh, yeah, I'm in Vista,
Oh,
California.
welcome. Very good.
Yeah,
all right. Any other visitors?
Hi, I'm Randy Powell, KO4 WTM. I'm from West Palm Beach, Florida.
Wow.
Using my wife's laptop.
Oh, excellent. You're some DX for us tonight. Thank you.
I'm visiting my son who's stationed here at Point Loma.
Oh, very good. Well, welcome and thank you so much for coming to our meeting.
Hey, it's nice to have another WTN call sign.
Thank you.
All right, any other visitors? Okay, we have one announcement. Joseph, our president is not here this evening. We wanted to let everybody know that John Weaver has accepted a position on the board as a director. He is taking over the position vacated by Chris Steinhardt, who is moved on to vice president. So that's the announcement that I have. Are there any other announcements from the floor?
Yes, KK6FRK.
Oh, go ahead, Kevin.
Yes, just some folks have heard this on the ARESnet. I've made the announcement. July 16th is a scouting event called Operation on Target. Folks can go to operationontarget.org website. It is a scouting event where scout units go to hilltops or mountaintops and signal one another with mirrors and then confirm the contact over amateur radio. So I will be operating from 10 a.m. to 12 on Mount Soledad. There are several scout units throughout San Diego County and Southern California that have contacted me. So people can go to the website and see the units that plan to activate. And if you are already hanging out up at Mount Palomar or anywhere, Mount Woodson, hiking, if you see mirrors being flashed between 10 and 12, I'm going to request the board to let me use the 730 repeater to coordinate mirror signaling among scouting units in the footprint of the repeater. So just go to operationontarget.org to learn more if you're interested. Thanks much.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Take care.
Thank you. Are you at a place where you can put the link in the chat?
Yes, let me go ahead and I'll put the link in the chat momentarily.
Okay. And
right.
Joe in chat reminds me that there's a request for safety radio in the updated scope. That's our newsletter at palomararc.org to support the Harding Hustle near Santiago Peak. So this is an event that is asking for radio support. So if you are into that, check it out in the most recent issue of the newsletter. And also, there is ongoing Wednesday from 1300 to 1700 scouting contacts on Wednesdays. So it's a reminder. All right, any other announcements from the floor? Okay, and if you think of something later on, please share it. I'll introduce the board of directors. Our president, Joe, K6JPE. Our vice president is Chris, KD9LF. Our secretary is Jim, W6TQS. Treasurer, also Jim, K2VO. Membership chair is Glenn, AI6RR. Director Ron, AJ6FQ. John Weaver is our director number 2, brand new. Keith is our scope editor. If you have an idea for an article or an article that you would like to submit, that is the person that you need to be speaking with. Okay, M6CXW is Keith's call sign. Repeater chair is Mark. He's here tonight, KF6WTN. And our site chair is Charlie, NN3V. Do either one of you have a short repeater report for us tonight?
I have a report.
Oh, please proceed.
I am pleased to announce that Kilo 6 Mike Yankee Whiskey, Jacob Adler, San Diego resident, was just awarded our 2022 ARRL Foundation Scholarship.
That's excellent news. Thank you so much. For those of you unfamiliar with this program, it's a scholarship that we donated money to start, and it sounds like we have somebody that has earned it this year.
And with us, excuse me, where's Tom Hubbard? Oh, there he is. KK6 Whiskey Romeo uniform was last year's scholarship awardee, and he is doing an amazing job in studying electrical engineering and a whole bunch of science topics. So, Tom.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. That's some exceptionally good news that you've shared with us, Charlie. Thank you. Okay, any other announcements before we move on to introduce the speaker? All right. Our speaker tonight is Oliver Dully, K6OLI, and he's going to give us a presentation on beginning Winlink with some practical applications, such as the Did You Feel It earthquake program and hospital support in Los Angeles County. What we're going to learn is how to report earthquake intensity to the United States Geographical Survey, or USGS, even when commercial communication networks are compromised, and amateur radio networks can meet these communication needs. While not required, Oliver encourages all of us to follow along and send a Winlink Did You Feel It message to the USGS as part of the presentation. The Winlink program is available for free at the link that is in the scope. So if you look at your scope, you can see that it's at winlink.org/Winlink Express. A helpful guide to setting up a Winlink account is a YouTube video also linked in your scope. And what I'll do is put both of these links in the chat for you. A little bit about Oliver. Oliver serves as District Emergency Coordinator for ARES LAX Northeast, which provides amateur radio communications backup for 911 receiving hospitals in northeastern Los Angeles County. Operators with ARES LAX Northeast use innovative technologies like Winlink with VARA HF, VARA FM, Packet, and AREDN Mesh, for example, to provide amateur radio solutions for the complex communication demands of medical facilities when commercial options may have been compromised. He is one of the initiators of the VARA FM Winlink Autobahn connecting Los Angeles and Ventura counties. He's authored several popular Winlink quick guides for Packet and VARA FM. Examples of these Winlink guides can be found on his QRZ page. He coordinates the Winlink Did You Feel It project, a Winlink development team collaboration with the United States Geological Survey. He lives with his wife, Tran, KN6NHI, in lovely Pasadena, California. And with that, I will turn the presentation over to our speaker. Thank you so much for doing this. And I will monitor chat and let you know if I see any questions.
Thank you so much, Michelle, and thank you so much for the warm welcome. Really appreciate being here with all of you tonight. And, you know, just as I said earlier, and let me repeat that, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. There's no such thing as a wrong question. We all started somewhere, so please consider this a very supportive and fun learning environment. And I think, Michelle, your introduction made it so easy. We'll get through the first couple of slides relatively quickly. All right, first off, I'd like to ask you a question. How many of you here, and just raise your hand if you have, digitally if you want to, have experienced an earthquake in Southern California or anywhere? Just show of hands, pretty much everybody. How many of you have sent a "did you feel it" afterwards, either through the web or something? Okay, good number. So quite a few of you. And those who have experienced the earthquake and haven't sent a "did you feel it," we're not going to report you, just so you know, right? No, just kidding. The point there is we want to have fun, and hopefully I can relate some of the importance of the data that you as amateur radio operators can provide, not just to the USGS, but in general. This is not something that is, it's not something that's limited to one idea. And I hope you can get away with that tonight. All right, let me share my screen and let's go straight into the, oops, I'll just minimize that. Again, I'm Oliver K6OLI, and if you want to reach out to me, you can find me at k6oli@arrl.net. As Michelle already mentioned, I'm the District Emergency Coordinator for ARES LX Northeast. That's the blue area right here. And let me move the video to this side. That makes it easier for me. That's the blue area here. We've got 23 hospitals that we're supposed to support. As you know, it's with turnover and everything. It's always a challenge, but we're doing a pretty good job. And Winlink is part of how we're doing this. There are 4 districts in LA County. By the way, LA County is the only county in the country that's also a section, the LAX section. With 10 million people, we're larger than countries like Austria, Switzerland, Sweden, in terms of population size. Our MOU, our Memorandum of Understanding, is with the County of Los Angeles, and that is to provide communications backup when commercial options are compromised. And what we're trying to do is here to bridge the gap, right? At some point, hopefully the communications, the commercial communications come back and we can go back to our lives. But how we do that, that's always a challenge. And that's an evolving battle because our technologies are changing. Michelle and I and the group before had a conversation about that. We live in technologically very exciting times, and the tools we use today are not the same we used 5 years ago, and 5 years from now, they will not be the same tools. And so as amateur radio operators, we want to evolve with that. So the question is, in all of your minds, what is Winlink? Well, the simple answer is it's email over radio. And that kind of encapsulates, people make a big deal about messaging systems. Really, that's what it is, email over radio. So quick show of hands, how many of you think that having the ability to send email when the internet is gone is a valuable ability in a disaster? Just show of hands. Pretty much everybody, right? Imagine your email is gone. How many of you do not use email on a regular basis? No. Right? We all use email on a regular basis. So having that ability is really powerful as an amateur radio operator to have. But it's more than that. It's an incident management aid. Winlink has a very robust stable of templates, forms that you can use. ICS, for those of you who are doing CERT or CERT trained, for those of you in healthcare or in government, the fire departments, police departments, you deal with ICS forms all the time. So HICS, Hospital Incident Command Forms. There are not all of them, but the most critical ones are available within Winlink, and we found with our hospitals, they really appreciate that. There are a couple of specific LA County forms in there that actually have been used during this pandemic. Yes, it's still ongoing, but you know, they have been used. And so it was very nice to see that because we're using the forms that are official and are available officially, we can plug into the county system if we're called to action. So keep that in mind. Having this robust, standardized forms catalog really empowers you, the operator, to plug into an ICS type response, right? And then finally, it's a multi-mode communication tool. You're not stuck with one particular mode of sending your traffic. You've got things like VARA, which is a software modem on FM, You've got it for HF, for single sideband. That's technically what it should be called. You could use Packdoor. You can use Packet, the older style Packet. You can use RDOP if you're a Linux person. So those are options you can use. So why does ARES LAX use Winlink? Well, here's the thing. Does anybody want to spell cephalexin tablet? Volunteers. Anybody feel comfortable to do this on Morse code without any errors? I'm, a single sideband person. I do voice. If I have to spell this, we're going to be here until 2 weeks from now. And I'm not a medical person. Amiodarone injection, I would have to say Alpha, Mike, India, Oscar, and then stop fulfills. It's very laborious. And we have lists like that we had to send on behalf of the county, going back and forth with the hospitals that had 50, 60, up to 100 of these resource requests and lists in there. So using something like Winlink, which can send a spreadsheet now, but even a simple comma-separated values file, we can send this in less than a minute. And that's a big plus. Think about that. I gave this presentation a couple of years ago. We were still in person, right? And one gentleman got up and said, I don't need that digital mumbo jumbo. I just happened to know that his wife was undergoing cancer treatment. And afterwards we had a conversation and, he used it. I don't need this. Like I said, I hope that the amateur radio operator assigned to your wife's hospital doesn't feel the same way. Because if she needs that medication and he has to spell it, might take a while. Funny enough, 3 weeks later, I get a Winlink email from him saying, oh, that was easy to set up. And there you go. So think about what it does for you. Think about what it does for your community. And that's where we're going with this. I also want to make it clear, I'm not saying Winlink is the answer to everything. Winlink's a great tool for logistical traffic. Do you want to use it for tactical? No, use voice for that, or Morse code, or FT8 for tactical communications, really brief messages, probably more effective. But for things where you need lists and complex traffic, Winlink's a great tool. Number one, it gives us accuracy because it does have the way your internet works too, right? You have an ACK, you send out a packet that if it's received 100%, you get an ACK back. If not, it says send it again and so on. So that's exactly how that works. So accuracy is a big deal. It's error correction built in, and the speed, of course. On packet, 5 kilobytes per minute might not sound very fast, and it's not, but it's sure a lot faster than reading it out over voice, right, and spelling it. VARA FM can do 30 kilobytes to 80 kilobytes per minute. Now you're talking about Excel spreadsheets, some small Word documents without a lot of graphics. That becomes possible. And then, of course, you've got the Winlink forms. So you're burning the candle on the other end as well. The forms actually compress the data down to 1 kilobyte to 4 kilobytes. And you can send that even on packet in under a minute. And that really gives you a lot of options there. You can send spreadsheets, CSV, comma-separated values file without any formatting is between 1 kilobyte and 5 kilobytes. An Excel sheet is between 10 and 100 kilobytes. And using VARA FM, you can send this in a reasonable amount of time, usually between 2 and 3 minutes max. And that's a great saving. Would you want to send a 100 kilobyte Excel spreadsheet over packet? It would take up 20 minutes. And I've seen people do this on the packet frequency in SoCal 050, right? And it drove everybody bonkers. So be mindful of the fact that you probably shouldn't be on a gateway for more than 3 to 4 minutes unless you have a lot of emergency traffic. Well, how does it work? At its most basic level, Winlink can work between two peers, two radio stations that both have Winlink, they have a modem of some form, and they have a radio. And that's the true superpower of amateur radio, that we don't need infrastructure to connect with one another. Is it nice to have a post office? Absolutely. Do we absolutely have to have it? No. Most people will give this presentation and they'll start at the top, right? They'll start with this is what Amazon Cloud is. No, but you're the focus here. Without you, the operator, it is just electronics and they just sit there. But you, the operators, make the system work. So understand, peer-to-peer, if all else fails, you can still send messages peer-to-peer. You can do it via packet, VARA FM, VARA HF, Pactor. You need to be in the same session at the same time, but you can do this. By the way, ARES LAX Northeast has a weekly peer-to-peer net every Thursday night at 7 p.m. You're more than welcome. We actually have pretty good reach, but you're more than welcome to listen in and try it out. If you want to, I'll pop in the frequency information later in the chat. The next from there are things called RMS, radio message servers. We also refer to them as gateways. What's a gateway? Think of it as your local post office. You can certainly send the message between the person here on the left and the person on the right. And you could just drive over to your friend's house and drop it off in their mailbox. It's one option. Or you can put a stamp on it, put it in your mailbox, the mail server picks it up, puts it in the post office, and then another person comes and delivers it. That's exactly what an RMS does. It's a post office. It stores the information. So operator on the left here can send a message that can then connect to another message server. They can be linked, can be the same message server, and then the operator on the right can come and pick it up at his or her leisure. So that's a great, powerful system because now you have that time dimension, right? You don't both have to be on the air at the same time. One person can send it at 3 p.m., then do something else. The other person can pick it up at 8 p.m. That's totally doable. Beyond that, you've got the Amazon cloud now, right? The common message server lives on the cloud, the CMS. By the way, there's one, there used to be 5 message servers distributed around the world. Now that it's in the cloud, that's not necessary anymore. However, there's one CMS, backup CMS left, and that is, believe it or not, in San Diego, California. So at that point, you can send, as the operator here on the left, the information to your local post office, and that forwards it to the internet. And from there, it can go anywhere in the world, can go to any email address, right? And then operator B here can either pick it up on his or her tablet or via Winlink. It's completely up to them. But that's a very robust system because as these things go away, you still have options. Does that make sense? So there are multiple layers of fail-safes and backups built in. From Amazon Cloud goes down, we're going to be in deep trouble, to the local message servers that can also forward information via HF to one another, all the way down to the peer-to-peer side of things. All right, one thing about peer-to-peer, and I want to clear that up from the get-go. If you're in peer-to-peer mode, you both need to be, or if it's 15 stations, all the stations need to be in the same mode for this to work, right? So VARA FM needs to talk with VARA FM, packet session needs to be with packet, VARA HF with VARA HF, and so on. If one station is in VARA FM, the other one's in packet, they won't be able to connect because they're speaking different languages. The nice thing about RMS message servers or gateways is they take that out of the equation. It doesn't matter that one person can send in with VARA FM if the gateway is set up for that. Another one can use AREDN mesh. The next one can use packet. As long as the gateway can handle all of that, not a problem. And of course, the same goes with HF. You can use VARA HF and you can use Pactor to leave the message there at that particular gateway and then pick it up any other mode that you'd like to. Practice makes perfect. One of the things that I want to point out is we're going to do a little practice today, but please, we see that on the reflector, on the Winlink reflector a lot. It is an emergency communications tool, but that doesn't mean it's set it and forget it. If you want to use Winlink, I encourage you to use it at least once a month. After 400 days of disuse, your account will actually get deleted. That's how the system is set up. And the other thing is, Winlink is an extremely dynamic environment. So there's a lot of development going on. I encourage you to use this on a regular basis simply because you want your forms to be updated, you want the program to be updated, and so on. So you have the maximum amount of compatibility. At ARES LAX, as I said, we do have a weekly net to do this, but we also have fifth Saturday exercises, which are a lot of fun. In most cases, those are deployment exercises where we go to different sites and we set up in the field. In this case, it was Huntington Hospital. There were 4 of us. Actually, you can't see Lou. Lou is right behind there, behind that shade. So would like to encourage you to do that. Winlink users. So who uses Winlink in general? In amateur radio operators, there are a lot of ARES and MCOM groups that use it. People use it privately to talk with their families. One of the things I do at Shakeout every year is I send a text, Winlink to text message to my sister, and she replies via text. So she knows that she's our out-of-state contact. So she knows we're okay, and vice versa. So those are local users. If you use CISA Shares, which is a government system also using Winlink, but they have their own frequency allocations, then you've got the Department of Homeland Security, you've got the Coast Guard, Cal OES, FEMA Region 10, 4, and 6 are very active in this. So understand it's being very widely used. This was a snapshot, and I showed that map earlier, and that literally was a 24-hour map of the connections, the live connections that were going on between different stations. So you see it's a very, very active system. Here's a map of the North American HF gateways for those of you who enjoy HF. By the way, this is already out of date. There are quite a few more now as it is. And this, I took this about a month and a half ago. So this has been growing a lot. So VARA HF is a good bang for the buck. And there are lots of gateways on the HF side also supporting Winlink. Here are the packet gateways in Southern California on the right, but you can see the packet gateways throughout the United States. You can see there's a preponderance along the coasts and, of course, in the eastern part of the United States. So you can see earthquake country, right? There's a distinct bundle of them. And of course, in the highly densely populated eastern United States, you see many of them. And you can see these here are in the area in LA County, the center here, Pasadena, that's Lou's Gateway, there's Robert's Gateway right here, a couple of mine, there's Jeff's Gateway, and they're gateways, and they're being maintained, I have to point that out, for free by volunteers. So please be mindful of these gateways. Make sure that your radio is working, that you're not over deviating, that you're treating these gateways with respect. It's very, very important because you essentially in somebody else's house and they're offering this as a resource to the community for practice, but also for emergencies.
There's a question from chat.
Yeah, go ahead, Michelle.
Can you click on one of those stations to see the information about it?
Yes, you can. Not on this slide, but I can show you later when we can go back to the RMS map. But you can click on, great question, you can click on each and every one of those and they usually tell you what the station call sign is, very often how you can contact them, and most importantly, the frequency. And if you want to, we can do that as part of the practical. If you remind me, I can actually show you, especially some of those big gun stations like K6SDR, KO00000. You can see the 80, 40, 20, you know, all the different frequencies and also the bandwidths. Great question. Any other questions? Cool. All right. Couple of pros and caveats, and that keep in mind, this isn't just Winlink, this is for amateur radio in general. Couple of pros, multi-band network, VHF, UHF, that's what makes amateur radio really, really powerful. Multi-mode, you can do PACTO, VARA HF, VARA FM, packet. You have all these options available. You can use the internet. And here's one of those things, just because you're an amateur radio operator, if you have internet, if somebody installed a Starlink at the hospital and you've got Winlink and can send the data, send it using Starlink internet connection. Don't be stuck on HF or FM. That's a really important part because that frees the frequency to somebody who may not have that capability out there, right? You can do local, regional, national, and international communications using Winlink, both directly as well as using the Winlink system to feed any email to any other email on the planet. It's flexible, it's relatively inexpensive to set up if you already have the radio equipment. It's a very familiar interface. Most of us use email on a daily basis. You will be really up and running with this very, very quickly. And then here's another big plus, and that's something that I think a lot of the agencies, when we give that talk, really appreciate because they haven't thought about it that way. There are many amateur radio operators already on site. Most of you live and work in your communities. You have that license, you're trained to do this. They don't have to ship you in. You can actually provide these ground truths right after and during an event. So really think about it in terms of, I'm not just a person with a radio. Think about it in terms of, I'm a person who's federally licensed, my name is on record, and I can provide ground truths to whether it's the fire department, whether it's police department, whether it's NGOs, you know, VOADs, whether it is the United States Geological Survey. That is a big, big plus. When we reached out to the USGS and we explained how this worked, because they weren't familiar with it, they said that's exactly what we've been looking for to fill what they call the donut hole. And the donut hole is that area that is usually the hardest hit. There's no more communications infrastructure. And they said the hardest hit areas are the most difficult to get data from. And before we have any reliable data, it's very difficult for us to tell somebody, well, we think that's where things are worst. And if you're a first responder, you're not sending people in blind. You first want to do a site assessment, right? So think about the power that you bring as amateur radio operators, and then how much you can leverage that power using something like Winlink. So keep that in mind as we're going. A couple of caveats. You do need an amateur radio shares license to use Winlink. There's no way around that, right? There's no encryption in amateur radio. And that is something that, for instance, we tell our hospitals from the get-go, and we keep reminding them even during exercises when they want to send traffic. Is this okay to send over an unencrypted? Because some hospitals have very strict policies. Others have talked with their legal department. They have a policy in place for what happens if there's no encrypted pathway out of this. However, in shares, there is encryption. So that might be an option. Message size is limited to 120 kilobytes, but really nobody in their right mind would send 120 kilobytes. You're just taking up way too much time and traffic and circuit capacity. So realistically, most people will keep their messages under 10 kilobytes to 20 kilobytes. Circuit capacity needs to be carefully managed. That's one of those things that we found in our exercises that takes a lot of rethinking for a lot of operators, because many amateur radio operators, it's a very individualistic hobby. When you're doing this, especially for emergency communications, you have to understand there's very limited circuit capacity. And instead of being a radio operator, you're switching over to being a network operator. As the operator, you need to understand where the bottlenecks are and understand this is where I need to be careful. This is where I need to keep my traffic small because it needs to go out over HF, for example, or I can actually keep it at that size, keep the formatting because it's a VARA FM. You need to be path aware. So keep that in mind. This is Jeff, W2 JCL, and he's at the Medical Alert Center. The Medical Alert Center is the EOC for hospitals in Los Angeles County. And that is how he very often sets up his station. Most of the traffic in LA County is via VARA FM, sometimes via packet. We use a lot of AREDN if we can, and we also use HF. Winlink as a whole has changed how we think about our networks. So keep Jeff in mind as we're going around. And by the way, every time we do these exercises, we did throughout the pandemic, we did 5 of these where we actually deployed outside. They offer power, shore power. And we always say, no, we don't want shore power because if it doesn't work with our solar panels, then we're doing something wrong. And those are the things we test in the field. Here's how this usually works. For those of you in CERT, let me ask you this. What's happening over the first 72 hours during and after an event? Is the federal government going to come in? Is the state going to come in? No, it's going to be a local response. Every disaster starts and ends at the local level. So keep that in mind. In our case, that means there will be hospital traffic. You've got, and I put the names in here, Tom at White Memorial Hospital, Robert at Verdugo Hospital, Lynn, let's say Pomona Hospital, and they choose different ways of sending traffic. One chooses VARA FM, the other one uses AREDN, the next one packet, however Jeff is set up. And Jeff then can give local traffic to the MAC directly to the people in logistics that we work with there. And that's usually how the first 72 hours, that's how all the traffic works, right? It's a local response. After that local response, what happens is you go into a state and federal response. Now you can actually start asking for help outside. Hopefully by that point, you've got cells on wheels coming online. But if you don't, you do have that HF option. Understand HF is a lot narrower circuit capacity than VARA FM or AREDN or packets. So the traffic will be slower. One of the things we found that's very different and goes kind of against the grain of the amateur radio practice, especially if you're doing a lot of contesting, is it's much more efficient and effective to collect all the traffic at a central point here at a gateway, let's say at the MAC or another gateway, and then forward it via HF rather than having all the stations sending their H traffic individually, because they're actually blocking each other because they're limited frequencies and you'd have to organize. It's much easier. It's also much faster because what happens is you have one gateway here, you've got one gateway there, the two of them connect, and this one sends all its traffic to that one gateway. Highly efficient to do that. If they all send it individually, it would be all over the place, but it also, you'd have a much higher failure rate. We actually got a chance to prove that in a side-by-side comparison on purpose with Ventura County, which has a lot of really great HF operators. They send all their traffic or most of their traffic on HF, and we actually brought it together. There was no doubt that our traffic reached the destination much faster. So those are things you can keep in mind. And then the out-of-area gateway, in our case, that's usually San Francisco or maybe Mexico or Arizona or Nevada, can send it to the internet. From there can go to Cal OES, the USGS, like we're doing tonight, or FEMA, or your relative, in my case, my sister, right? To let her know that she's okay. Okay, how-to and tools. I don't know, okay in time. Overview. Here are the things that you need for WinLink. You need WinLink. You need some sort of a modem. It can be hardware or software and sound card, which makes the modem modulator, demodulator, and you need a radio system. Most of you already have a radio system, right? In our case, most of the times we use a sound card and a software modem because it's much more efficient. Just a quick overview over the options available out there. SignalLink XG comms are very similar. We haven't had any problems with 9600 on SignalLinks. There's a lot of arguing going back and forth. Quite frankly, in the field, it makes absolutely zip of a difference. They're the DRA board and RIM, and those are just sound cards. They're the sound cards that are built into your radio. Yaesu and ICOMs, for example, have very good sound cards built in. For those of you with an FT991A, I do have bad news. It is one of the most difficult radios to set up for this. I don't know what Yaesu was thinking there. They probably thought if you're doing digital, you're not doing voice, but in MCOM, you usually do both digital and voice. So for most of the people who have an FT991A in our group, they went back to using a SignalLink because that was plug and play for them. It was much easier. And they're Pactor modems. And that's a specific, again, it doesn't interoperate with VARA. It needs another Pactor modem on the other side, but highly efficient, works under really, really crappy conditions, very powerful. And then, of course, if you have a Kentronics or other TNC lying around, you can use that, you know, to do packet. But you can, of course, do packet with any sound card-based system as well. So I'm not going to go too much into the details. If you have any questions about that, I think in terms of cost, anything with a sound card is going to be less expensive than a hardware option there. I think a Pactor P4 modem right now, the least expensive one goes for $1,700. And you still need the cables. So keep that in mind. It's probably best for agencies, but this is great for field operators if you need to make quick adjustments. We use a couple of DRA boards and RIMs for the gateways here. And I have an IC7100 ICOM that I absolutely love. I don't plug anything else in there. Has a really, really great sound card in there. All right. Popular software modem choices. You've got sound modem UC7HO. You may notice that's a Ukrainian call sign. And it's a great piece of software, works extremely well. You can do packet with that. You can do BPSK, 8PSK, and QPSK, especially QPSK 2400 is a great option if you don't want to spend money on VARA FM. If you have a local club and you say, I want to keep it less expensive, you can get similar performance out of QPSK 2400. VARA FM is the new kid in town. It's about 7 years old. And VARA FM and VARA HF, really highly effective. Cost last time I checked was $69. Don't quote me on that. He may, everything's gotten more expensive, right? Who would have thought we'd pay $7 for a gallon of gas, right? But the point there is he may have upped the prices since the last time I checked, but it's very, very effective, and we'll show you how it works in a couple of moments, right? But those are softwares, and they work in concert with your sound card, like the Signal Link DRA boards or with your radio. Quick overview here. This is how we practice. We ask everybody to actually have Go kits. And here you can see some of the Go kits people put together. There's a Signal Link that I show. There's another Signal Link here. Robert's gateway system here. You can see we actually practice what we preach. So let me point out the signal station workflow real quick. You've got your computer, you write your message, you select your session in Winlink, and then you tell Winlink, I want to use VARA FM to send this. VARA FM then sends the sounds to the Signal Link, the digital signals to the Signal Link, which turns it into sounds and then sends it via your radio. And the other operator, it's the other way around. The radio hears the sounds, sends it to the Signal Link. The Signal Link then turns it into digital, and that turns it into your Winlink message. Same thing works for your packet or QPSK or VARA HF and all that. Of course, if you do NBeams, which is FL Digi and FL Message together, that works in a very similar way, right? You actually encode and decode your messages and send them out via your sound card. And of course, doesn't matter whether you use VARA FM or VARA HF, it's completely up to you and what you decide is the right thing to do. A couple of quick use cases here. As I mentioned before, we do a lot of practice, and up there on the left was an interoperability exercise that worked out really well with our friends from the LA County Disaster Communications Service, which is attached to the Sheriff's Department. Baker to Vegas, any of you do Baker to Vegas, we usually use Winlink messages to let our loved ones at home know that we're okay, and we use HF for that a lot of cases. CERT, we actually were invited to do a CERT exercise but before the pandemic in Monterey PARC, and they sent people out to go to different locations, bring back these damage reports, and we sent those via Winlink. We used AREDN mesh for that. And so we had a live video feed of the site they were at, as well as Winlink for the messages. And we used 2-meter handhelds for the voice communications. Worked really well. The city manager was super happy with this because we could show on the big screen what was going on, and people sent small pictures for that. So it worked out really well. And Jeff and David, you've already met. On the right here, this was an exercise we did also about 4 years ago at the beginning of the Did You Feel It project. And every one of these dots is at least one operator sending in a Did You Feel It report. And this map was specifically made by the USGS for that exercise. So these were all exercise reports sent in, and they went all out for that. And it also shows you how excited USGS is for this. And I do want to encourage you to do exercises on a regular basis. They're not going to produce these maps every single time, but just so you see, they're taking this extremely seriously. The last exercise we did, for instance, SoCal Shifting 2022, actually made it into the USGS internal newsletter. So thank you to all of you who participated and made that happen. One of the other projects we've done in Southern California is the so-called VARA FM Autobahn. Then all these gateways are on the same frequency. And yes, I understand that maybe if it's uncoordinated during and after an event, it may get clogged, but we can work with one another. But you can see Ventura County all the way to the county line in LA is on this. And there are a couple of gateways like W6BI and AJ7C here and K6IRF that have HF forwarding capability. So everybody in that area, in these areas, can contact any one of these HF gateways, even if you're a technician, and get your traffic out. That's very powerful. The other thing we found out is we actually have pretty good connection, especially in that time from May to around October with Tijuana and Mike N6 KCB stations down there. So another powerful tool at our disposal. And also understand that within WinLink, if you're set up for that in VARA FM or in Packet, you, the operator, can become a digipeater. And that, of course, increases the reach of these networks even more so. And remember, we want people to think about it in terms of your network operator. All right, a couple of things we're going to go over real quick. There are tons of other things we can talk about. Mapping, request and catalog, GPS integration. There's a webmail interface if you want to check whether you have messages before you use WinLink. There's an online radio message viewer where you can see every message being sent in the United States. Everybody can do that. Just keep that in mind. It's extremely useful. It also shows peer-to-peer messages. There's some people out there claiming that peer-to-peer messages do not show up on the online radio message viewer. That is not so. Peer-to-peer messages do show up on the online radio message viewer. And then, of course, there's APRS integration. So if you're using APRS, then you can actually, if you're sending a WinLink position report, that shows up on APRS. All right. Let's go over real quick the interface, and then we'll do some practical stuff, all right? I'll take questions and then do some practical stuff. Okay, it's a two-step message sending process. There are people out there, and there's a couple of YouTube videos where you're thinking, you're complicating this. It's 2 steps. 1, you create the message. 2, you select the session. That's all it takes, right? 1, you compose the message. You select the message type. Does it go through WinLink gateway, or is it peer-to-peer message? It's important in the message to say which type of message it is. And then you post it to the outbox. Now it's sitting in your outbox and it's waiting for you to send it. So you go to step 2, you select the session, and we did a quick run through that earlier. Then you open the session. That's the next important part of it. Then you choose the WinLink gateway or the peer-to-peer you want to send to, and then you start the session. And then if the gods of propagation are with you, you can send your traffic, right? Alrighty. Message interface. Here's your message. You can see your inbox, read items, outbox. All of that is on your left-hand side there. This is your message. You can highlight it. If it's in your outbox still, you can just double-click it and open it, make changes to it. Usually, if you use a form, we tell you don't make changes to the actual message. And if you need to make changes within the form, just start over. Because any change you make here will not show up in the viewer, right? Just so you know. There's a message preview, especially if you're receiving messages, super practical. There are the message buttons up here. The one on the left is the important one, that's start a new message. But you have a reply, reply all, send acknowledgement, forward, forward without changes. This one is the GPS button. This is the catalog button. You can save messages, you can print them just like you would in real life, right? You've got the folders here, we already talked about those. And then, of course, on the top right is the session selector, and we'll walk you through that step by step later. And of course, if you have an attachment that you received, or you put an attachment in, you want to see what it looks like for the recipient before you send it, it's in your outbox, you can click on that little paper clip, and that makes your life a lot easier. It actually opens it up in a browser if it is an actual form or template. Here's what it looks like when you click new message. Right? You want to generate a new message. You've got a couple of options to enter the 2 here. You can just enter the call, KN6BKT in this case. You don't have to add winlink.org. You can send it to an email address, any regular email address like k6olite@arl.net. You can send it to a phone number. In this case, and don't send it to that. It's not a real phone number. We call these Hollywood phone numbers. You can tell because they've got the 3 5s in there, right? 626-555-1325, completely made up. At Verizon Pix, if you know that extension, you can actually send that person an SMS using WinLink. And as I said, I do that with my sister every shakeout as part of our preparedness.
A question?
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
We have 1 question so far, and there are 4 comments. So I'm going to hold the comments to when we take a break before the demo. But this question is actually about what we're looking at right now. For sending a message, there are 3 options: WinLink, radio only, and peer-to-peer, P2P. So what is radio only? What does that mean?
Well, radio only is a system at which WinLink will force the messages to not touch any internet, even if it's available. It was designed and is used by agencies. To my mind, amateur radio operators never send radio only because it's extremely difficult for the system to handle. This is when all else fails and the agencies that supply or focus on life safety and really keep the country running, that's what they would use. There was a larger organization who shall go unnamed, does a lot of good in this country, but they wanted to test radio only. And I know this can be a little bit of a fetish for amateur radio operators. And they decided to test this, and they essentially swamped with just a couple of messages, they swamped the entire system, and it got a lot of the sysops very angry because there was no reason to send any of these messages as radio only. It's self-contained, and the messages in radio only will forward until they get to what is called an MPS, a server where they wait to be picked up. And in this case, they decided to send it through Europe and back, and it just brought the whole system to a grinding halt. It was not a good way of doing this. This should be reserved. If it were up to me, we'd reserve this completely for agency traffic, right? So Winlink message is going to go through a gateway, and as an amateur radio operator, if there's any chance of a internet connection, you want that. And here's the other thing. If there is no internet connection and your gateway doesn't do forwarding, you can just tell the other side to come and pick the message up at that particular gateway. It does the same thing as radio only, just more efficiently. Does that answer it? I hope it does.
Yes, I think we're good.
So most of the time you want to use Winlink messages, which means they're going via gateway, or you want to use peer-to-peer messages, which means you know the peer you're going to connect to, right? So you got the two, you got the CC. It's important to post your message to Outbox when you're done, so it sits in your Outbox. And of course, on top, you've got the select templates, and we'll go through that together later. And there's a list: Winlink message, radio only message, and the peer-to-peer message. So again, my suggestion is stay away from radio only. There's the idea that it's just that you're only using radio there is not. It should be called something different if you in terms of UX design, if you're asking me. All right, a couple of forms and templates. I know we have quite a few people here from CERT and other agencies here. There's a whole slew of excellent templates available. You've got on the right here, I've listed some of the ICS forms. Most of that has updated. We actually put the names in there, but we put in the types of forms that help you run an entire incident. So from the ICS 202 onwards, you can run an incident. If that's all you had, you could run an incident. And we only put the forms on there. Obviously, that makes sense to be sent via radio. At some point, the form gets so complex that it's probably better to do it on a spreadsheet, right? There's an incident action plan, incident status report. We encourage you to use the general forms. If you have a question about, is there a form available? Check the general forms, it's really useful. There are FEMA forms, and of course the USGS forms. So really, really powerful stuff. And what these forms do is they give you a nice HTML interface in which you can enter the data. Then you can submit it to the message. It compresses it down, attaches a small file called an XML file that has form information in there. And the other side, because they also have Winlink, their Winlink reads it. It says, oh, there's an XML, and it opens it up, and it's really nice looking form. I can show you a couple of examples later if you want to. Sessions. It's important to pick the correct session for what you're planning to do. As I mentioned before, Telnet Winlink is the internet. And tonight, there's absolutely no problem with sending it via internet, right? Or for any example. I'll try and show you a couple of other options there too, but keep that in mind. So remember, there's a drop-down menu, and the open session is an actual button. So you need to click on that to actually activate the session. A couple more resources, the Winlink website, winlink.org. We highly recommend that you take a look at the Winlink Book of Knowledge. There are tons of guides for your particular radio available for your particular challenges. So take a look at that. The software modems, the packet radio, and I can send that to Michelle afterwards. If you're interested, you can use Direwolf if you want to. And VARA FM, as well as VARA HF, is available at rustmodem.wordpress.com. You can use VARA, by the way, for free. Buying the license buys you the higher speeds. that's really what it does, right? There's the official Winlink Google Groups. If you have a specific radio, that's the first place where I would go and enter the information in the search. And you get a lot of information that way. There are Winlink training classes done by the Wave Talkers. You can see that on wavetalkers.com. And they'll walk you through step by step by step. That's a 4-hour basics class. And they're available for free. And you can take a look at that. And a lot of questions are being asked and answered. So we find that's very efficient. And then, of course, if we want to practice, if you don't have a local net available, the MCOM training organization, ETO, does a great job with exercises. Very linear. But you can use gateways in that. They also have some peer-to-peer work that they're doing. You can use local, you can do it via VHF, UHF, or internet for that matter, but they tend to be very, very HF focused as well. So just keep that in mind, but they're great. And the exercises are really step by step. We worked with them on the SoCal shifting exercise not too long ago, and we got some great responses from all over the country. So it was great. All right.
Question.
So far, so good. Showtime.
We have a question.
Go ahead, question.
How easy is it to send automated messages? The example that Kevin has is, let's say I have a remote seismic sensor with no commercial internet. The sensor hits a threshold event, and I want to send the measurement in a form over RF to USGS in an automated way with no human mediation. He suggests that maybe it's like an API. Is it possible?
Well, there is an API interface with Winlink. So, I mean, if you can think of it, you can make it possible. My suggestion would be to either reach out to Lore or to Phil, excuse me, to Phil, because they can tell you whether it's possible to do that in this specific instance. Winlink is extremely flexible with that, especially if you're willing to do the work.
Okay.
What won't work is saying, I want to do this, can you program it? That probably won't go over too well because we're all volunteers. But if you're saying, hey, listen, I'm willing to automate this, by all means, I find the Winlink development team is extremely open to working with people.
Yeah, Kevin says, thank you for, knowing Kevin, I think he understands very well your guidance on that. Okay, so I have a number of comments that might be good to pass along. And the first one is about circuit capacity. I'm going to turn this into a question. So you mentioned circuit capacity needs to be very carefully managed, and that you're called upon to be more of a network operator and to understand the bottlenecks. The suggestion is that the people that design and maintain the Cactus network know about this pretty well and deal with this all the time. So I was wondering if there was any interaction or collaboration between Winlink and the Cactus network in terms of figuring out how to best manage networks.
Well, the Cactus network is a repeater network, if I recall correctly, right?
Yes. It is.
So,
they do deal with a lot of network and bottleneck stuff. So that was the comment, which I turned into a question.
Yeah, we haven't reached out to them in particular. We've noticed that network and circuit capacity is a problem every time you have a large scale exercise.
Yeah.
When we do shakeout, and we do one of our large shakeout exercises with San Diego ARES, Ventura County, Riverside, and so on. It takes a lot of us. We actually even have to start thinking about who's taking which frequency on HF to forward messages, because there are 20-odd million people living in greater Southern California.
Right.
So that is something I think realistically, I don't think we're going to send a whole lot of HF traffic for the first 24, 48 hours after any event. Because just to give you an example, FEMA Region 4 and 6 had an exercise where they sent 990 messages, Winlink messages, and it just happened that ARRL decided to have a digital contest on the same day. And so the digital contest used the same frequencies as the Winlink gateways. There wasn't a whole lot going out over HF.
Right.
So those are challenges we all deal with, and I have to say we've had that conversation internally. You have a friend who's got a dish for the Starlink network and they're willing to hook that up to your gateway, by all means, more power to you. You know,
Yeah.
and that's part in terms of MCOM. Don't get stuck on it has to be amateur radio. We're trying to preserve lives, and life safety is the #1 goal for what we're doing. So I hope.
Right. Understand. The second one I have here is about providing ground truths. So that resonated with one of us in the audience, and it is also key for the National Weather Service. That has been something that the NWS has emphasized, that they really appreciate the being able to get ground truths, and it's quite often over amateur radio. It's a valuable resource for them. And another one is a comment about the USGS map using the same type of symbols for the communicators that they used on the Quake map. And they thought that that was extremely effective, and liked that a lot. And then the last one is a comment about VARA. So VARA is not an open source product. It's not an open source protocol. It's closed.
Mhm.
What would it take to get Winlink to use an open source protocol?
It has to be robust. I mean, RDOP is pretty much open source, right? I mean, you have to ask Rick Muthing about that. But as long as it's robust and it works, I mean, I remember the early days of VARA coming online, right? And then VARA FM came, and we actually had to trick Winlink into thinking that VARA FM was VARA HF. That's how we made it work. And then we proved that it could work and it was efficient, and then Phil added the code for this, right? So I think proving that something works and can be used for these purposes is, but Winlink by and large is, as I said, is pretty open-minded about reaching out. If it's feasible, by all means, but you know. Understand that there are only a handful of people who are actually doing the programming here. And I mean, most of the programming on Winlink is done by one person.
Right. Yeah, that's not unusual for projects across the land. So yeah. Understand. And all volunteer, correct?
Yes. And we keep joking, you know, we all want double the pay with inflation going up, and
that's right.
Double of zero, right?
That's right. Okay, any other questions? Either put them in chat, or you can go ahead and ask them from the floor, or comments.
Shall we do a live?
Couple of comments you missed, Michelle.
Well, let's see. Oh, thank you. I did not scroll down. There's a comment about ETO weekly exercises are very worthwhile.
Mm-hmm.
From Mike, thank you. And a reminder that Winlink messages require an entry in the subject field. So it sounds like you cannot send a blank subject message. You have to use a subject.
Yeah, and usually Winlink reminds you of that.
Yeah, good. I was going to ask you, does it give you a clear error message? Because I think it does. The last time I used Winlink is about 6 months ago, and yeah, large amounts of changes in the user interface from years ago. It's really a whole lot better. All right, any other questions or comments, or if anybody sees something I missed, feel free to call it out.
All right, let's do something together, huh? Shall we? All right.
Yes, please.
Let me point something out here. A couple of quick things. One, I'm using software actually to simulate a GPS. We highly recommend that you get a GPS. It doesn't have to be super expensive. You can get a really good one for $20. The one we usually recommend right now is $100. I bought mine for $25. So you probably, but there's a global chip shortage for these particular ones. But in this case, if you have a GPS, it makes your life a lot easier in terms of getting your latitude and your longitude. If you do not fill any information in here, most of the forms will default to the center of the grid square that you set up in your Winlink setup. We always recommend that you manually enter your GPS coordinates if you don't have an automated way of doing this. By the way, one of the coolest features here is you can actually get your information in via TCP/IP. So you can actually use it via the phone too, right? There are phone apps on iPhone that can send it over the networks. Cool stuff. The other thing I wanted to point out real quick, and hopefully we get a chance to show you this live. There's a whole new mapping interface now in Winlink that didn't exist 6 months ago. And it gives you a ton of information. For instance, these are Winlink check-ins. You can see you've got like 173 on this particular example. You can display that map. Bear with me as my computer is thinking. And this is a whole other presentation, right? If you're seeing this in 173 and they're not showing up, probably your filters are still set. So we can not limit them by age and clear all selections. They're safe. And there you see all the people that participated in that particular exercise. So you can see this is very, very useful. You can click on this. In this case, N0DAJ, you can pull up more information on the Winlink check-in that he sent with one click. You can set a variety of filters. And again, this is a totally separate talk. I just wanted to make you aware of that. Really powerful stuff. And you can do the same thing with a whole host of different forms. I have more forms on there than most of you will have, because I also have a lot of trial forms. But somebody mentioned the weather. You can definitely bring up the weather reports too and take a look at that. So, you know, find out what the information, what the information is that people send in there. Right. The National Weather Service, by the way, is more distributed. So it seems to be more difficult to get one person to talk to about what kind of information would be useful. With the USGS, it was very easy because there's one person in charge of the program, and his programmer, the two of them know exactly what they wanted out of this. So that made it super easy. And by the way, these are Did You Feel It map reports, and hopefully we'll get some from you earlier, right? And here they're filtered for different intensity, right? Mercalli scale greater than 8, right? Alrighty, but let's do something hands-on. What do you think? Should we do that? Alrighty. So first thing we want to do is to click on New Message. That's a button up there on the left-hand side of your screen, of your Winlink screen. And we'll walk you through that step by step. And if I go too fast, please stop me. I get very excited by this. So you got a new message. You could type in a message here and just, you know, send a message just like that. You don't have to use a template, but I do want to show you the templates. So you click on the Select Template button here, and it opens this up. Then you want to click on the plus next to Standard Templates, right? And that expands it. We've actually cut down on the templates and only keep the most used templates in there, because I know there's a temptation to say my agency needs to have their own form, but really one of the things we've learned from those large fires in California is customizing templates beyond, let's say, the ICS forms creates a lot of friction during responses where you have more than 1, 2, 3 agencies involved. And that's one of the outcomes of the mega fires, right? So I pointed out earlier, you got the ICS forms here. As you can see, they're much nicer. You can actually see what they are. Our next project is to work on the Higgs forms for the hospitals as well. But what I want you to do in this is to go down to where it says USGS. You can fill out the Spanish one, but you know, my Spanish is non-existent, so I'll use the USGS Did You Feel It? And you can double click on this, or you can highlight it and select. But in this case, let's just double click on that. And of course, it brings it up on the other side. Let me bring this form over. All right. So here's the earthquake. Did you feel it? And let me point out a couple of things here. Number one, the information from this form sent via amateur radio or via the internet, if you want to, goes to the exact same database as the information you sent in over your cell phone or via the website. There's no that the tags are the same, that all of that is the same. There are a couple of things that this form does that are in addition that we worked with the USGS with that make this special. One thing, for instance, there's an exercise button. And that's really cool because in the real form, not the real form, but this is a real form. In the web form, you do not have an exercise option. If you want to report a real event, you would choose real event. And it actually asks you, do you know the USGS event ID? That's optional. You don't have to enter that, right? But if you do, more power to you. It makes it easier for them to assign the report to a specific earthquake. By the way, if you remember a big earthquake, last year we had the San Fernando Valley earthquake, and a lot of people remembered that. You can look up the ID. There was no, did you feel it at that time? But you could actually send in historical data. That's doable. You need to get the time right, but keep that in mind. But tonight we're going to do exercise. And I invite you for an optional exercise ID to enter. That's the full PARC, right? That's what you go for? All right. 2022, right? And I invite you to do that just so USGS will know that this is an exercise we're doing tonight, a demonstration. And here's the next one, and you have to fill that out. Did you feel it? Yes or no? And yes, obviously you want to fill that out, but the no is not that obvious. It's actually really important if you have an earthquake within your vicinity. Let's say you're in South County, San Diego, and there's an earthquake in the north. You want to let USGS know that you didn't feel it if you didn't feel it. Why? Because it helps them define the event horizon, right? It defines the boundaries, as they call it, right, of the event. So a not felt report is as important as a felt report. Keep that in mind, especially if, I mean, for your, obviously if the earthquake is in the Philippines, no need to send in a not felt report because you wouldn't feel that. But if it's a regional earthquake, by all means, fill that out. But tonight we're going to say yes. You can click on this if you want to report something, let's say a day old, you can still do that. Generally speaking, you want to report it. The best reports are within the hour, but anywhere in the first 24 hours, I think that's when it's the most valuable, because then it also goes into their pager products. If you get it in within the hour, that information goes into the pager product, and the pager product is what USGS sends to all its clients, which includes the EOCs, the fire departments, and so on that subscribe to that. So if you can tell them things are really bad here, that empowers you and gets you help potentially faster. Just keep that in mind. No guarantees, but you want to get that data out. But let's say it was today's date, but the time, let's say the earthquake happened at 2000 hours, right? So we can actually click on that. We can change it to 2000. We click OK. We want to have all the same time. If you run an exercise, it actually makes a lot of sense. You do want to fill in your street address, right? In my case, you know, I have this preset, but, you know, fill in your full street address. It could be 90 Arlington Garden, whatever it is. That has to be in there. The latitude, longitude is voluntary. And if we gave you the information earlier, you can actually take your street address and paste that and find out your latitude and longitude. This is a benefit that amateur radio operators can provide to the USGS because it gives them a higher granularity, more detailed look at what's happening. And you only have to do it to 4 decimals. It doesn't have to be more than that, right? Remember that longitude in degrees, in decimal degrees, is a negative number in North America. If you forget the negative sign, it locates you in China. All right. If there is a discrepancy, by the way, between your street address and your latitude, longitude, they will take your street address because they figure your street address is more correct, right? But keep that in mind. All right. Let's go through a couple of the questions. If that's all you want to send, by all means, you know, you can skip everything else and go to the bottom and send it. But as it says here, the remainder of this form is optional. If you click no up here, then you just fill in the time, the location, and then you go to the bottom and you submit. You don't have to fill out anything else. They don't need to know where you didn't feel it, right? They just want to know you didn't feel it, right? But we said yes, so let's go through that. What was your situation during the earthquake? I was talking with you, right? So I was inside of a building. Were you asleep? I wasn't. I don't know about you guys. Yeah, I still look awake here, so that's pretty good. All right. So I wasn't asleep. Did other feel it? Let's say, yeah, everyone felt it because we were at the PARC meeting. Let's make it big. Let's say it was strong shaking, right? How did you react? And I call that the macho question. That seems to be a problem with a lot of guys. I've never heard a woman complain about this one. And people have actually asked me this. Why does the federal government need to know whether I was frightened? during an earthquake. They don't care. They just want to know what was the impact. So you can say not specified. You can quit. Most women just look at this and say it's a data point, and go with very little reaction, move on with life. But for guys, it seems to be no. Nobody needs to. Point is macho question. All right, skip it if you're feeling uncomfortable. How did you respond? If you say anything other than dropped in covered, you've not been paying attention during shakeout, right? Was it difficult to stand and walk? Let's say yes, it was. Did you notice any swinging of doors? Yes. Let's say it was slight swinging. Did you hear creaking and other noises? Yes, loud noises, because Oliver was talking and things rattled loudly. Did pictures on the walls? Think about it. Think about the physics of this. If a picture gets moved, how much force does that take, right? Yes, but in a fall. If furniture or appliances slide, how much force does that take? That's really what all of these questions are about, right? Say no. Heavy appliances like your fridge, how much does that, how much power does that take? And were any freestanding walls and fences damaged? I don't know, it's dark outside, I can't see. And was there any damage to the building? Well, we live in SoCal, every building has hairline cracks, right? And so you can do additional comments if you have additional observations. Let's say demonstration for PARC. Thank you. Send via, let's say, VARA FM. I should just add that, right? Everybody with me so far? Pretty straightforward, right? All right. Let's click submit. And here you get a nice pop-up, the did you feel it intensity. Understand that this is a Winlink courtesy feedback button. It is built on the USGS, whatchamacallit, code. But this is, don't take this as the gospel truth. The USGS does its own analysis of your data completely independent of this. This is you reported intensity 5 as a courtesy. All right. So you have some feedback. Cool. And click continue. And now you have this empty page. You can click, close the tab here. And now all this information has been added here. Remember PARC 2022, which entered that. But there is more information added to this. This is the exact same information as you would send if you filled out the web form, right? But there are a couple of differences. One is it adds your call sign to it. So you're putting a good name to this report. And that's where the ground truths come in. Who do you think they have more confidence in? A random report over the web, an anonymous report, or a report where they can trace the call sign? Makes it much easier, right? Tells them it's a call sign, so their database knows how to filter for it, and it gives them an additional timestamp. So very, very powerful stuff in there. The other thing I would like to invite you to do is in the CC up there, put in K6OLI. And we'll see whether we get some of these. Obviously, I can't put my own call sign in there. Michelle, is it okay if I put yours in there? FW5.
Sure, go ahead.
NYV. All right. And that's all you need to do. Next, we want to select send as Winlink message, because this is not a peer-to-peer message. Winlink message, and we post it to Outbox. In this case, I'll show you a quick VARA FM connection in a moment, but in your case, if it's especially if it's your first time, select Telnet Winlink, go to open session, and this Winlink window will come up. You don't have to do anything else. All you want to do now is click start. I'll just send it like that. Now we can download this message. And that's it. There's a couple of data points you see here. Let's not go too much into it, but you can see you sent one message. You see how much time it took. And you can see you received one message, and down here you see one sent, one received, total session time. right? That becomes really important when you start doing VARA HF and VARA FM. But that's all there is to it. That's the whole shebang.
There's a question in chat.
Yeah, go ahead.
Jacob asks, well, he says, bummer, my Mac is, he says, is to update with the current operating system. What other options do I have? So I think he means that the version of Mac OS is not playing well with WinLink. So he wants to know what other options.
Well, quite a few of the people using Macs in our group are using Parallels very successfully. You also have the option to use a program called PAT. And that's great for message generation. Just understand that a lot of the other additional WinLink features won't be available for that. PAT is a great program, no doubt about that. And I think it's really creative. Just understand it looks very different to the messages, by the way, and we just actually tested that. The "did you feel it" message, for example, looks exactly the same to the USGS, whether you send it via PAT or whether you send it via WinLink. What will change is what happens to it in the mapping here, because PAT messages do not send a little form data attachment that makes it mappable within WinLink. What do I mean by that? Let's see. There, you have a WinLink checkout, right? I can go click on attachments, and normally for most forms, if they're not GIS enabled, not Geographical Information System enabled, they will just have the XML, but because it's a checkout, it does have that information. You have the form data text. And now I'm getting technical, I'm sorry. That gives you the latitude and the longitude. And that's what makes it mappable. If that form data is not there and PAT doesn't add that, then it cannot be mapped within WinLink. There are other ways of extracting that information that, for instance, the ETO group does have, because they run a JavaScript on it, on the messages. But just keep that in mind, right? So that's one of the differences. But if you have a Mac, I would install PAT and use that, or do Parallels.
Good advice. Thank you.
All right.
I have a question in DM, and it is, if there was one thing that you could change about or add to WinLink next, what would it be?
One thing I could add to WinLink, what would I change?
Right. Yeah. If there's one, is there anything on your wish list that you would like to see either different or added?
I'm a member of the WinLink development team, so usually we discuss these things out when we want something added. There has pretty much a, don't tell Phil, but what 3 words would have been cool, but we took that. Don't want to bring that up again. All right, but the point was we were of different opinions there. But the point there is, I think it's WinLink today is not what it was a year ago. It's not what it was 5 years ago when I started using it. So understand that this is a very vibrant, extremely vibrant environment, and things will change, especially if you can convince people that there is an enormous benefit and lots of people are going to use it. Just like VARA FM, that was just, once it became clear that lots of people were going to use it, Phil added that in a couple of strokes. He added the mapping in a couple of weeks. Just so you know, because there was a benefit to it. It's being used. For instance, you have this option to generate a CSV file from any of these GIS-enabled forms. Well, here's the thing. An agency GIS person can take the CSV and create a wonderful dashboard that they can read data from. And that's, I could show you a couple of examples what these dashboards look like, but I don't want to keep you too long. Let me show you a quick VARA FM so you kind of see what that looks like. Do you want to see that, or?
Sure, sounds good.
Give me 1 second. I need to wake up the other computer. All righty, let's do this. You can still see my screen, right?
Yes.
All right. So in this case, I tend to run, and again, I explained that earlier. I'm doing something crazy here. I'm actually running VARA FM off the network. So it's not running live on this particular computer, but usually when you install it, it actually would run in the same, it would look almost identical to this, right? So at the bottom here, I'm showing you the VARA FM screen. You can have a couple of cool things here in VARA. You can go and you can ping different stations and see how good your connection is. Let me demonstrate this real quick because we really want to encourage people to use this. If I want to ping, let's say, K6YZF-11. K6YZF-11, right? Which is a local gateway. And I usually use the sound modem to see whether I've got a free and clear frequencies, which it looks like. I enter that information and I can start paying. And it tells me some great information here, right, on what the sound is like. It tells me I can hear, because this is how I hear K6YZF, I can hear him at 17.4 signal to noise and a VU of -21. That's all good. And vice versa, he can hear me at 22 with a VU of -25. So I can make adjustments and change that. I can say, hey, listen, W6BI-10, and I don't know where they updated, but he's in Simi Valley. There's no way I can reach him. And I can prove that to you by pinging him like this. I won't get a signal, but K6YZF-11 might actually have a path to him. So let's try that as a digipeater. There you go, which means I can reach a station in Simi Valley by going through one hop K6YZF-11. Which is great because K6YZF-11 doesn't have an HF rig hooked up, but W6BI-10 does. So if I need HF forwarding, I know I can send it to our good friend W6BI there, and you know he will forward the information for us. Very powerful stuff, no?
Yeah.
All right. And here's the thing. That was a ping. Now I know it's a viable path, but let's do a session. I go up here, we don't want to do a Winlink session, not a peer-to-peer, so here are the peer-to-peer sessions. And you go to VARA FM in this case, I click Open Session, and I can go direct to K6YZF-11. And for those of you who weren't here when we started a little bit earlier, give me a second here, because again, I'm doing this through a network, which is kind of crazy. So you can see VARA FM TNC is connected. You want to go to channel selection. I recommend doing that every time you have internet, right? And updating your table via the internet that updates all the stations that you potentially can reach. Understand this is potential. A lot of this, I mean, some of them are on the other side of the mountains. There's no way I'm going to reach them. But at least I have a list of the stations that I can try, right? Including some of them in Mexico, the N6 KCB stations, right? Again, understand that the frequency in VHF is not set. You have to manually set that on your radio. But in this case, let's pick K6YZF-11. I can just double click on him, and that puts K6YZF-11 in here. You can also manually change that information to, I don't know, K6OLI-12 if I wanted to, right? Makes no difference. K6YZF-11. By the way, they're the same machine. All right. We have our channel selected. Now we click on start. And what happens now is at the bottom here, you can see VARA K6OLI is calling K6YZF-11. And here's the same connection protocol that you saw with your telnet connection, right? Let's see whether some of you send me any data. It checks. There you go. We've got some information. We've got download messages. And you can see the speed here, level 7, 9,580 bits per second. That's pretty decent. You see a signal to noise, 23 dB. And there you go. W6 MBM, you're getting an extra bonus point here, right?
All right.
And we don't, We can post an acknowledgement, can certainly do that. But here's the cool part, right? We can actually look at W6, and this is the message exactly how it's received by the USGS. But because he sent it through here, we also can check he's got the form data text file. So what we can do, we can go to our mapping information, bring up the Did You Feel It map, click the display map, set a filter for, let's say, sending it in for in the last hour. Clear all selections and click save. And there he is. 66 MBM, is that your location?
Yes, sir.
All right, outstanding. And you can see he reported numeric intensity 5, modified Mercalli 5. So we can, of course, set the filters and actually start filtering for that, right? Show us everything greater than 4, greater than 5, greater than 6, and stuff like that. So that's cool stuff. And you saw how easy and fast this was. And how did you send it? I can't see your name here.
I did Winlink Telnet. Normally I do packet when I do the ETO drills.
Yeah, and so understand that works. If you want to do packet real quick, I can show you something real cool, and then I think we'll open it up to questions and we'll call it a night. What do you guys think? Okay, let me show you one cool thing about packet real quick here. And that is if you're using, in this case, and I'll bring this up here, I'm using QPSK AX25 2400 baud. Usually you would use AX25 1200 baud, right? But in this case, you can actually use the faster version. And understand the two of them don't talk with one another, so you need to be in the same mode to do this. But you can go into the packet Winlink, you can go into the open session, you can go, excuse me, you can go into the settings, and here's after you've done all the settings. In this case, as I said, I'm using a different, I'm not using the local computer here, but you switch to 9600 baud. And that's the trick of this, making it really fast. And it'll restart this. And now we click on start. And if you've used packet on before, you'll see how much faster this actually goes.
Mm-hmm.
And here's your acknowledgement coming back to you.
So this overrides the fact that the channel specifies 1200 baud only in the channel select, right?
Yes.
Okay.
The speed is determined by the modem, not by what the channel selection says.
Okay, cool.
That's a great question. All right. And there you have it. We could talk hours on VARA HF and how to set that up. That'd be totally different. But I mean, you have all these options. And what I would really like to encourage you to do is one, experiment, learn. There are great guides out there. There are things like the ETO organization give you a reason to do this every Thursday. And of course, to reach out whenever you have any questions. I think I'll stop the share right now and take any final questions, additional questions.
Just a plug for those ETO drills. They do things like sending photographs in addition to the templates, and I think a lot of very practical things that are kind of fun. So you learn by doing the drill. If you know, I had never sent a photograph using Winlink, but doing the drill, you figure it out and you do it. So I try to do that every Thursday.
And Mike, that's a great point. And again, it just gives you a chance to work at your own speed. And I think ETO is doing great work with that. All right, any other questions? Was that kind of what you were looking for in terms of an introduction to Winlink? All right, see a couple of thumbs up. And please try it out with your families. One of the things I do want to point out is Winlink has a whitelist system. So you do want to send messages to your families under blue skies, because that adds their email to the whitelist system so they can contact you the other way around and they don't get denied by the spam filter. But other than that, it's pretty straightforward. Don't make it any more complicated than it absolutely has to be. And practice regularly. ETO is a great option. Practice locally. San Diego ARES has a ton of practice opportunities all the time. And maybe your local club can do a regular, maybe monthly, bi-monthly Winlink net, where you can try out things like peer-to-peer, just work with friends. I think those are things that, when we got started with digital, it was actually Mike, KK6EZP, who's now Silent Key. He, for the first 3 weeks, he did FL Digi, and he was the only station there till he told us about it. And of course, we joined him, but he was just sending out beacons. So, but that's how all of this got started. We all start somewhere, all right?
Well said.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for an excellent
Thank you.
presentation. Lots of positive feedback. Jacob had to drop out, but he loved the presentation and says thank you in chat. And looking forward to getting more feedback and being able to share it with you over the next few months as people watch the recording.
Thank you, Michelle. Really appreciate it. And again, ARES LAX Northeast is a very open, welcoming group. You're always welcome to go to our Groups IO, check the calendar, and just join us for any of our meetings. You don't have to be a member. You don't have to become a member. You can just say, hey, listen, this sounds like fun. All right. So thank you so much again for having me.
Thank you. All right, the floor is open for any sort of discussion or show and tell, or any further questions about our topic.
It was a very well put together, very comprehensive presentation of it.
Okay, a quick question about I was interested in that interface to, he said text messaging to family members. And I can't remember the last time I used email to send a text message. So the protocol is what, the 10-digit phone number followed by the cellular service, right? At the cellular service domain, something like that, right?
Michelle, is it okay if I share one more time? I want to show you something really cool.
Oh, sure. Please go ahead.
There you go. Since you bring it up, you can start a new message, because we've all been there in that, Mike. So standard templates, go to your general forms.
Oh.
And there is, where is it? Where did it go? We actually have a text message, quick message. No, what happened to the text message one? We actually have a text message template that fills in the extension. If you know what the extension is, whether it's Verizon or whatnot, for whatever reason, I can't seem to see it right now. My eyes are getting tired.
I don't see the word text message anywhere. A quick message .txt?
No, that's not it.
That's something else. Okay.
No. It's literally, it's a text message thing. I hope they didn't take that out. It was one of the most useful templates that we've had. You know, people love that. I don't know. Maybe in the field situation. Huh? Looks like it got deleted. I can look it up again, but it is on the website, and I can send you the link if you want to. But it actually fills in. You just fill in the phone number, and then the app part is filled in. You just, if you know their Verizon, if you know their AT&T or whatever, it has like 25 different options, including a couple of Canadian and European ones, and it actually fills it in for you.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
All right, any last comments or questions, or any sort of shares, show and tell before we close for the evening? I'm looking at you, Mark. You always have a show and tell.
I'll just say thanks for coordinating the meeting, Michelle.
Oh, sure. Happy to help.
Sorry, Michelle. I don't know if you're aware of this. I ended up helping a friend of mine with COVID. So I'm under lockdown and hiding.
Oh, dear. Okay, that's a show and tell share that we don't want. So,
Here.
oh, dear. Oh, my.
Buy ceramic tipped tweezers.
Well, that's a pretty cool thing. Okay.
They're doing electronics work. If anybody wants send me something at KF6WTN. I'll show you where you can get them. This is
Okay.
part of a whole set. I'm
Okay.
set.
Right. Okay. Well, we hope that you get sprung soon. I hope that everything works
Do you
out
use those
okay.
tweezers for the nasal swab, Mark? Save money on the swab, you know, like a little cotton and those ceramic tweezers, you're all set.
Oh,
I'll tell you what they're handy for is like if you've got to pick up 2032 batteries, which are positive on one side, negative on the other. And these are reverse tweezers. They're spring loaded, so they hold themselves shut.
All right.
But I
Pretty
use
good.
these quite a bit for my electronic stuff.
very good. All right. Anyone else? All right. Thank you, everybody. We will do it again next month and be looking for a scope to come out in very early August for the August meeting. And please send in articles to our newsletter chair. He would very much appreciate to have all your activity reports and cool finds like the one that